In this addendum to the problem, we're looking at a situation where management is unhappy with the solution you're suggesting here. They're noting that you are hiring and firing with great magnitude, and they're not sure that this is going to help employee morale. One thing they suggest is that let's limit the number of employees that can be laid off in any given month to the value 2, thinking that that will help somewhat. Well, the first thing to do is to modify your model to bring in any additional parameters. The additional parameter we need here is the limit of 2. I know it's tempting to put that simply as a value in Solver because that's where you're going to be using it, but this modeling tenets generally suggest every number you're dealing with needs to be identified on the model and identified as a parameter. So let's go ahead and insert a row here. And what we're going to do is put in a row that's going to say this value is going to be the maximum workers laid off per month. And we got some spacing issues here. Okay. And the value we have here is the number 2, which is not a $sign. So let's go ahead and paint a format from higher up in our parameters to make that look appropriate. Now, to actually bring this in and apply it, we simply need to go into Solver. Let's add a constraint that the maximum laid off per month, so that's going to be each of these months, has to be less than or equal to our new parameter, the value 2. Now, before we go ahead and hit solve, let's close this again, because one thing we're going to want to know is the change in cost. Anytime you add a constraint, cost will go up or revenue will go down, or they'll stay the same. So let's go ahead and keep our old production cost, and we just need a copy of what we have in our current cell G4 in this cell, so we then can calculate the difference and determine the additional cost of putting in this particular constraint. So what I'm simply going to do is click on this cell, right click, choose copy, go to the cell below, right click, choose paste value, and now I have that same number below. Let's simply give it a format to make it look appropriate, and let's calculate a difference, which is simply equal to our objective, and that will change depending whether or not Solver finds a better solution or a worse solution. Most likely worse, because cost will go up. And let's go ahead and subtract off our old production costs. Now, one thing to note here is that your 6-month production cost is going to go up probably. Hence, if we take it and subtract the old production cost, this difference is going to be positive. It's just important to realize that, because if you ended up with a negative difference, it might be a little bit confusing to the user of the model. Let's go back into Solver. And again, we've already added the constraint, so all we have to do is hit solve in this case. It has found a solution. Hit OK. You can see that we now are limited to the value 2 in any of these months total of workers laid off, and the difference here is slightly over $14,000. So now this needs to go back to management, or if you are in the position to make the decision, you can now consider whether or not it is worth $14,000 over 6 months. And morale certainly lasts longer than that, but certainly your cost will be incurred longer than that as well. But whether or not basically you're going to get value out of this constraint or this limitation on laying off workers each month.